My faith tells me that people deserve a safe place to call home. Some of the things that I'm seeing happen in our country is telling me that it's not just people who are experiencing poverty and homelessness that don't have a safe place to call home anymore. We cannot live in a world that is governed by politicians and government and pretend that they are not influenced by what's happening culturally. And the church, its number one job is to help influence what's happening culturally.
I tell people I'm no longer a Christian. I'm a Christ follower.
If a politician is pushing a policy that is harmful and isn't going to care for the people that we are called to care for in the church, then we should actively be engaged in pushing forward to eliminate those policies.
And the crowd goes wild.
People experiencing homelessness are constituents of the state of Florida, and they have value and they have worth. My biggest fear is they are going to force people experiencing homelessness to live in camps. Show me what's happening in Louisiana right now.
And it's happening.
Everybody sees things in black and white, but the Holy Spirit always introduces a third way. And the third way is the path of righteousness. And it's a path that takes into account people and consequences and compromise and conversation. 4 years from now, I hope that people understand that my goal will always be the third way.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tracy Lewis from Imagine Marketing. I'm joined by Pastor Scott, who is the founder and CEO of Matthew's Hope, Shelley Bradford, who is the president and executive director of Matthew's Hope, and Reverend Mary Downey, who is the founder and CEO of Hope Partnership in Osceola County and is also currently running for Osceola County Commissioner District 4. Welcome to this week's episode of Straight Talk, No BS with Matthew's Hope, presented by Imagine Marketing. At Imagine Marketing, we put in the extra effort to craft a tailored strategy for success. This podcast is produced, filmed, and edited by John Burkett with Imagine. This week, we are bringing you part 2 with Reverend Mary Downey, and we'll be discussing her decision to run for office and what her priorities are if she is elected. Mary, how are the church and politics related, and how should they be related?
I think a lot of people would kind of maybe be put off by that question because we have spent so much time in, especially the United States, saying that the church and the state should be separated. And so we spend a lot of time thinking about freedom of religion, and I would say for some people, freedom from religion. And in that space, it feels like that the two are just counter each other. The reality is that they should never counter each other. They should be intertwined in a way of who we are as people. We cannot live in a world that is governed by politicians and government and pretend that they are not influenced by what's happening culturally. And the church, its number one job is to help influence what's happening culturally. And so when we think about why should a clergy person be a politician, the question is not that. The question is actually, is the church actually working to put policy forward that cares for people? We always say at our organization, because we're nonpartisan and we don't like to step into any kind of anything as a nonprofit, that it is always policy over politics and policy over politicians. If a politician is pushing a policy that is harmful and isn't going to care for the people that we are called to care for in the church, then we should actively be engaged in pushing forward to eliminate those policies.
And the crowd goes wild. That was the perfect way of explaining it. Mm-hmm. It's, this whole thing, this, church and I think that challenge that we run into, and Mary nailed it, was if it goes against helping and caring for our fellow man, no matter what religion they are.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay. I'm not here as a pastor to convert anybody. When someone says, in fact, Mary, I tell people I'm no longer a Christian. I'm a Christ follower.
Yeah, I get that.
Because some of the stuff I'm seeing right now just, quite honestly, makes me sick to my stomach.
Absolutely.
And we're using it. We've taken what was said to us and we have moved it in a way that now we're making the politics our religion. And that's the part that really bothers me, is that I see no problem. And obviously I wouldn't have Mary here if I had a problem with someone who was in the clergy running for office, because I also know she's not going to get up there and try to tell people vote a certain way because the Bible told you so. First off, that just never existed. It never happened. Okay. So it's disturbing to me. I'm a little bit more probably outspoken than others, but I'm also not running for office. But those of you that have tried to suggest I run for office know this is what you get. Um, we can do better. We can do better. And it comes back down to what we said in our previous episode with Mary, is that love God, love his people. Watch what happens. Can you imagine if the political groups did that and said, okay, this is not about whether I'm a Baptist, whether I'm Catholic, I'm Protestant, I'm Methodist, I'm Lutheran, I can keep going. It's about, from their leadership standpoint, are we caring for our people?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Are we caring for our people? God will handle the rest of that. We don't have to. I'm convinced of that. God will respond to that in a way that I think that most of us would be completely fascinated by. Even, I don't know about you, I'm still walking around like, oh my God, did you realize what God just did? Even though my expectation is that he always will, but I'm still blown away by the power of it.
Yes. So, Mary, what made you decide to run for Osceola County Commissioner?
Well, I think what Scott is saying is kind of the crux of it, which is that I deeply believe, because my faith tells me, that people deserve a safe place to call home.
Mm.
And I've spent my entire career leaning into that idea, and that safe place to call home, in some of the things that I'm seeing happen in our country, is telling me that it's not just people who are experiencing poverty and homelessness that don't have a safe place to call home anymore. We are often told that the best way that you can counteract policies that's happening at a federal level is that you can run locally, because locally you have the opportunity to decide how those types of things are going to affect your community. And as I was discerning out if I wanted to run or not, I had a very significant moment, actually, that kind of solidified it for me. And it's a weird one, but I'll share it with you. So I was invited to travel to South Korea and speak at the Smart City Initiative and Technology Conference as the keynote speaker to talk about affordable housing. Now, that may seem very weird, but Osceola County is in the midst of building out a smart city called NeoCity.
Okay.
So we've had lots of conversations with different technologies and technology leaders across the world. And I happen to be the chair of the Semiconductor Advisory Prosperity Council. I don't know, it's got a long name, but it has to do with like building technology, because one of our goals in Osceola County is we want to shift our industry to not be reliant on only one industry. We've been reliant on our hospitality and tourism industry for a very long time. There's nothing wrong with hospitality and tourism. It's a wonderful industry. It should not be our only industry. Just like everywhere else, there should always be a diversified industry so that your people have an opportunity to have options of where they can work. And so Osceola County has been working to build out NeoCity. I got invited to this thing. I'm up on the stage and I'm actually talking about how when a significant tourism attraction opened in my community, there was a conversation about building housing along the 192 corridor. I know this from a retired city planner, that he had pushed to build out affordable housing for people who were wanting to live near the theme parks and work there. And the decision makers of the time decided that they wanted to make that area focused on tourism. And so they started building hotels and motels. And here we are. So I'm giving this speech about how, yes, there's room for hotels and motels and tourism and hospitality, but there also has to be room for the people who are going to work in it. And so as you're building out your smart city, wherever you are in the world, don't just think about your highest wage earners. Think about everyone who's going to work there and think about where they're going to live. I walk off the stage and I realize I can put myself on as many boards. I can be on the Osceola County Chamber Board. I can be the semiconductor board chair. I can be in this room. I can be in that room. But if I want to make sure that we are going to prioritize everyone, I have to be on that dais and be one of the decision makers.
That's good. Put yourself in there. Mary, you are aware of and focused on addressing our homelessness crisis. Do you think you are an outlier in politics in that sense?
I think the word outlier is actually really interesting to use, and I giggle because we've been talking about it a little bit. The idea that no one else is paying attention to it. And if you had asked me that question in 2006 and even maybe 2012, I would have said, yes, that no one else is paying attention to it, especially in my county, that there was a lot of people who had their heads in the sand in regards to what was going on. What I have seen happen, and I said this on the previous podcast with you all, that I have a lot of pride in Osceola County. And I have that pride because I saw a new set of commissioners come in who also seem to be paying attention. And that's how we got the Neo City Initiative. Another wonderful initiative that we have right now is called Osceola Prosper, which is if you graduate from high school in Osceola County and you would like to attend our community college, Valencia College, Osceola Prosper will pay your way if you have no other way to pay, which is phenomenal. We were, as a county, I believe, number 65 out of 67 of high school graduates going into college. Now we are number 3 because of Osceola Prosper.
It's huge.
It's amazing. It's as a first generation college student for me, when I learned about it, it made my heart sing, because the number one way to alleviate poverty is education. And so being able to bring not just industry and not just education, but we have an opportunity for industry. We have an opportunity for education. We have an opportunity for other incredible things like the new initiative that's happening with, I believe it's UCF, who is doing a more hospitality inlined bachelor's. And in Osceola County, if you graduate from Valencia, you get a direct connect into UCF. And so all of it works together. And so I have seen my community start thinking about the future and not just trying to patch what has happened in the past. And so do I think everybody has the same heart that I do, especially as some of the things that we talked about in the last podcast about why people are experiencing homelessness and what that looks like? I think that that's different. My motivation is different for sure. But I don't see myself alone anymore. There were many years when I did.
And I would add this too, is that what's unique about Mary, what she brings to the table in this particular time of the politics of Osceola County, is that she's got dirt under her fingernails. And I'll explain that a little bit. When I was in seminary, my favorite professor, a guy named Steve Brown. If you've never heard of him, I encourage you to look him up. He has this amazing voice. He always finishes his commentary with, "And you think about that." The last book that if you ever hear his voice and then meet him, you're expecting this 10-foot man to walk in who's a little shorter than I am. But a fabulous, amazing individual, speaks all over the world. And Steve said to me, and he's one of the few people that call me Scotty, and he said, "Scotty, you're going to meet a lot of Christians with scabs on their knees. The ones you want to look for are those with dirt under their fingernails. They're doing the work, and the workers are few." Mary is a worker. She has been in the trenches. There's one thing to study statistics, study reports and commissions and all the different things they put together to try to figure out how to. But the reality of it is there's probably some scabs on her knees too, but there's absolutely dirt on her fingernails when it comes to being in the trenches, understanding what's happening. And I think the one thing that we miss in local politics is, and across the gamut, is folks that have been there. They've been in the middle of it.
Yep.
They have been looking for and creating opportunities and ways to address issues. And I think that's what she brings, whether she'll say it or not, from an outsider looking in. That's what she brings to the table that typically others do not. Her own personal upbringing and her experiencing with poverty, what have you, but more recently over the last many years that I've known you out there, looking for not just looking for answers, but when the answers weren't there, creating an answer. And that's important to understand.
Thank you for that, Scott.
Shelley, affordable housing and affordability crisis are things we hear a lot in the news lately. But how many elected officials are actually doing things to address those issues?
I haven't really seen any. I hear a lot of the talk as they're running for office and things like that. But then when it comes right down to it, I don't see them really addressing the housing crisis at all. It's more about how can we build more roads? How can we like you had said earlier, how can we put more things in for our tourism and things? And that's not gonna. I agree 100%, and I think that one of the organizations in Orange County started out well with housing their people, having affordable housing for their people. I don't think it has ended that way.
Mm.
And I think that, so many politicians are just disconnected. And that's what I really respect about you is you're not disconnected.
Well, thank you for that. And, affordable housing is it's actually a term that has like a legal terminology around it. It actually is defined by area median income and by HUD regulations. And so I often talk to people about affordable housing, but I also talk to them about attainable housing, and they're not the same. And it's very difficult actually to build attainable housing. That's actually our missing middle when it comes to housing in this community in general. Is we can build affordable housing, which is like this actual low income tax credit program that you have to jump through a lot of hoops for. You have certain, it's called LIHTC. You have certain LIHTC developers who are really good at getting their applications through and building it out. And then they get support from counties with home dollars and CDBG dollars, depending on, what they're building. It's just this really actually complicated way to build housing. And then you have attainable housing, which there is no support to build whatsoever, not even this complicated way of doing it. There's absolutely no support to build it whatsoever. And so you don't have anybody who wants to build attainable housing because it's not financially feasible to build it. It costs too much to build it. And then what happens is that if you're just a regular Joe Blow developer, you have no reason to not build something where you can charge it as luxury. There's no incentives necessary. Part of that problem and why there's no incentives necessary, though, please, I'm on my soapbox, please forgive me, is that the state of Florida has legislative rules that do not allow us to be able to put forth incentives for developers to build attainable housing. They tell us we can't mandate, if you build this luxury apartment, you have to set aside 25% for attainable and affordable housing. We're not allowed to do that. And so many, and this isn't an apology for what we're seeing in our community, but it's an explanation of so many people's hands are tied because of what's happening at our state legislator. And a big thing that's happening right now is property taxes. We're going to see even less services happen if that is voted through. And it is absolutely another example of state taking action that the local politicians are going to have to navigate around in some kind of capacity.
Tallahassee has done a bang-up job of screwing up things really bad. However, I would encourage people, this is from me, look at, when you're looking into these folks, look at their net worth. Um, I got to tell you, people like Randy Fine could never relate to where most of the people that he is so supposed to be serving, he could never relate or understand it. And that's part of the challenge is they're putting things into place for what I call the pretty people and forgetting often the very people that make this country run. And that may sound harsh, but the good news is Mary didn't say it, I did. And I'll take the bullet for it because it's really getting pretty ridiculous. Some of the things, I mean, we could sit here for probably a couple days and discuss things that have happened in Tallahassee that have made it very tough for local municipalities to work through.
Yeah. So speaking of Tallahassee, has Florida's anti-camping law fixed the homelessness crisis in our area? Because that was what it was expected
God, is that
to
a
do,
real
right?
question?
The answer is no.
That was the purpose, right?
Good Lord.
Anti-camping.
We don't have the time, but if we had the time, I'll just give it this much. HB 1365 is the most disgusting piece of legislature that has come out of Tallahassee in a long time. And anybody who voted for it should absolutely be ashamed because they were either didn't read it, didn't care, or just mean-spirited.
Yeah, it's dehumanized
Because
so many people.
It's crazy what that has done and how difficult it has made the jobs of the nonprofits. And by the way, those of you that wonder about the nonprofits, I can only speak for Matthew's Hope, but only 6.2% of our budget comes from taxpayer-funded money. And I will remind you, since we're here, that our leaders that we vote in are taxpayer-funded public servants, and it's really time we start treating them that way. They are here at the will of the people to serve the people. And we've got to get back to that way of thinking before we destroy everything we know as the country that we once stood, I'm going to speak for myself, once stood very proud for. There are times when I've traveled, I was just in Canada this last week, and it was disgusting what people think of us right now. And it's not true, but it's based on what they're being exposed to.
Yep.
And, we've really got to change who we are and what we think. And again, without bringing our faith and without doing the church and politic thing all over again, it really is saying is if we follow what is said to us, then that should also dictate what our politics are.
So do you think that the folks in Tallahassee pass things like the anti-camping law or suggest things like eliminating property taxes so that they can credit for something that sounds like a win without regard for the impacts on the local communities?
Here's what I think. I think that we have a very broken system where things are passed through not necessarily based on the policy at all. I think that decisions are made around other things that I'm not in the room to hear and to know what they are. But I think that those things are happening. And so it's about protecting your base. Well, what's my base going to like? As opposed to understanding that we represent everyone, regardless of whether or not they're in our base or not. People experiencing homelessness are constituents of the state of Florida, and they have value and they have worth. It's one of the reasons why, since we started our Hope Cares Day, the supervisor elections is there twice a month to tell our folks that they are allowed to register to vote. We work with them to get an address back so they become, and their politics might be different than mine. In fact, a lot of folks that are experiencing homelessness politics are very different from mine, but their voice matters and they have the right to use it. And so I think that we have a lot of things going on that have little to do with the policy. The anti-camping bill is rooted in a long-standing dispute that happened in California between the difference between transitional housing and housing first. It is a argument that some group had, and then they had the right conversation with the right person, and they have made their way into where they are now affecting policy. And this particular think tank that's doing this, you can see their name all over our current budget, actually. You can see their name all over the budget in Louisiana, where they just passed a bill that if you don't go in and accept mental health services, they can send you to a camp. Wow. That is happening in Louisiana. That is real.
As we
So
speak.
you say the camping bill is the worst thing. It's not.
It
The one
really
in
isn't the
Louisiana
worst thing.
is the worst thing.
They've taken that opened the door
It opened the door.
to worse things.
Correct.
Yes.
And we don't have to lift ourselves very far when we start talking about work camps, guys. That lift is not heavy. It's happening. Look it up. It's not a lie. It's not me. I feel like when I talk about it, I should put on like a tinfoil hat and apologize. But I can tell you that last February, in February 2024, was it 20? When did they freeze our? Is it 24?
24. Yeah.
In February 2024, when they froze all of the nonprofits' assets, when it came to federal funding, when they said you can't pay rent, I told my team, my biggest fear is they are going to force people experiencing homelessness to live in camps. Show me what's happening in Louisiana right now.
Yeah.
And it's happening. And I'll just throw this. You mentioned the state tax.
The property tax.
No property tax. Look, I as a homeowner, I would love not to pay property taxes. But notice no one is saying where the money's going to come from.
Right.
We already don't have a state tax in Florida. And quite honestly, the people that are rooting this on, y'all are going to be dead. I'm just going to put it like it is. You're going to be dead by the time the damage of this is going to be seen. And all I'm asking is, before we vote yes on no property taxes, shouldn't somebody be saying, and here's how we're going to address the needs? It's already cutting. Education's already in trouble in Florida.
Yep.
And it's already taken a big chunk away from education. But that was the lie that was also sold to us years ago when we started the lottery. We're going to do the lottery, and that's going to supplement our school districts and what have you. And then the minute that it went into effect, they took the other money away and made it depend on the lottery. This is the kind of stuff that if you aren't asking questions, then you're going to get exactly what you're getting. And if this is what you want, what is wrong?
I just think people don't think through, just like you just said, that I would love to not pay property taxes. I'm sure you as well, right?
Oh, I know. I'm a Democrat. I love to pay taxes. That's what they say.
Okay. Well, anyway, so my point is all of us would love to not pay property taxes, but in the end of the day, you've got to think about what Scott just said. Okay, so then what's next? What's behind that curtain?
Yeah.
So is it going to be now we're going to have state tax? Who knows, right?
Yeah.
Because nobody's talking about it.
And I think Scott brings up a great point. Is we actually have a history in our state of seeing how this is going to play out. The lottery, Sadowski funds. Sadowski funds that were put in place in the 1990s, a dock tax on every home sold in the midst of one of our biggest housing booms, that a portion of it had to go back into affordable housing. And every single year they raided that tax and used it for other things. And then a couple of years ago, they were like, oh, well, we'll give you 15% of it now.
Which is crazy. Yeah.
It was supposed 100% of it was supposed to go to affordable housing.
It was sold to the public that this is going to be funding for this going forward. And it really has never been used for that. It's been used for everything but that. And again, these are things that people need to look at, because we're getting a bait and switch
Over and over.
I'm an independent, and but I was a lifelong Republican. I was until really the last probably, I think 8 years ago, I went independent. And part of it was, first off, I wasn't going to vote party lines just because. That made no sense to me. Not when I saw the Democrat across the street making a better argument than the person I was supposed to be voting for, or vice versa. That's just where I'm at. But you look at the things that are being put in place right now, and the truth is, and I said it, and I saw you kind of cringe when I said it, they're going to be dead. They're going to be dead. And you sit there and, do we need to do things better? Yes, we do. There's a $10 million bunch of money that just disappeared a while back that supposedly has nothing to do with our governor's wife. But, if you want to play politics, let's play them. I just want to know where the money is. Because the truth is, we are hurting people.
Yeah.
And again, if they're going to wave the Christian flag, which many of them are, if you're going to wave it, know what you're waving it for.
Mm-hmm.
And let's not talk out of both sides of our mouth. I will say one other thing. Eve, there was a local politician here that wanted told me when we came, I want my legacy to be about that I was the person who wanted to do something about homelessness in my community. And that person doesn't even speak to me now. You guys can figure out who it is on your own, because I don't want to sling too much mud. But that I just find that appalling, because things became more important, like a train stop in Cocoa, than anything else that's happening in our community.
Mary, 4 years from now, if elected, what do you hope people will say about your service as county commissioner?
That is a phenomenal question, and one that I think about a lot, because I think that I have to be ready for the fact that there will be people who will not like me in that role. What I have learned about policy and leading from the front is that we have built a community where everybody sees things in black and white. And I have always been a person who swims in the gray. And so I anticipate in 4 years that there will be people who will write nasty things about me on the internet. But I know that if that happens, it's because I was swimming in the gray.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking for finding places of compromise, for finding places where we don't live in this fundamentalist either side of the fence, because that gets us nowhere. There will be conversations that I will have to have that I will not like. And there will be times when decisions are made that I can't go along with, when others want me to. And there might be times when decisions are made where I have to figure out another way. When I say I swim in the gray, I don't want people to think like, oh, like that, like in a bad way. What I mean is there's this theological idea of a third way. So a lot of times people will think about theology and they'll think like that everything is just either or, an and or a but. It's one thing or another. But the Holy Spirit always introduces a third way. And the third way is the path of righteousness. And it's a path that takes into account people and consequences and compromise and conversation. We have built Hope Partnership out of the third way. It is my natural inkling. It is also hard to follow the third way. And so when I think about 4 years from now, I hope that people understand that my goal will always be the third way for the people.
Well said.
Well,
It's
thank
funny.
you.
It's before you close, I just want to say it's interesting, because we talk about swimming in the gray all the time,
All the time.
and it is a rough place to be. It can be rough waters. It doesn't mean that we're wishy-washy, but you really laid it out perfectly. It is allowing the Holy Spirit
Mm-hmm.
to move within our faith, and sometimes making the right decision is not the easy decision. Doing the right thing is not the easy thing to do. Doing the right thing for all involved is even tougher.
Mm-hmm.
But if we approach life in our politics, in our faith, and in our families across the board, that the Holy Spirit is alive and well, and we're at work at every moment, we can find that third way. And sometimes it also means that some of us need to sacrifice in some way. We didn't get our way completely. And that's okay, because I think sometimes when we do that, God also has a way of honoring that, that we sacrifice from ourselves that someone else might benefit. And so, Mary, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
I could talk with you for hours. We'll have to do it again after you win the election, and talk about what's going on. And I'll just say before Tracy closes us out here, folks, if you're listening, look into Mary's background, look into what she's done, look into who she is. What you see is what you get. I don't endorse politicians. I can't endorse politicians. What I will tell you is I am endorsing someone who is a friend and a someone who I want to be in the trenches with, because when it gets ugly, she knows how to throw it down. And you got to have someone like that in leadership, someone that's not afraid to take the shots, not afraid to that understanding going in. I know that never happens to you now, right?
Never.
No one ever sends me anything ugly or nasty.
I mean, I anticipate the ugly and nasty we're going to get after this probably, but it is what it is.
But understand what the reality of it is. And if it's good for the people and it's of God, even, one little thing I'll say, put God aside, which I personally can't do. But for those of you that say, okay, what is right in human decency?
Yes.
Let's just go with that.
What is dignity?
Yeah. And dignity is for all.
And dignity is for all.
Correct. That's a good place to end right there. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for watching, listening. Please like, subscribe, and share with a friend. We'll see you next time.